Good day, my listeners. We're at chapter 13, verse 13 of the book of 2 Samuel. And I, whither shall I cause my shame to go? And as for you, you shall be as one of the fools in Israel. Now therefore I pray you, speak unto the king, for he will not withhold me from you. Notes. To call a man a fool in Israel was to attribute him to every possible kind of wickedness and stupidity. Just look at Matthew chapter 5, verse 22. And, well, as a side note, marriages, obviously, between half-brothers and half-sisters were strictly forbidden, according to Leviticus chapter 18, verse 9, and Deuteronomy chapter 27, verse 22. It is certain that Tamar knew this, but possibly she was trying anything to stop the ungodly advances of her half-brother. Verse 14. Howbeit he would not hearken unto her voice, but being stronger than she, forced her, and lie with her. Notes. Point blank, he raped her. Verse 15. Then Amnon hated her exceedingly, so that the hatred wherewith he hated her was greater than the love wherewith he had for her. And Amnon said unto her, Arise and be gone. Notes. As stupid as all this sounds, he somehow finds a way to blame her for what he had actually done. Now, whenever we're talking about loved here, it doesn't mean that he actually really loved her, but is given in this manner to express the degree of his present hatred. As stated, he falsely blamed her. Verse 16. And she said unto him, There is no cause. This calamity in sending me away is greater than the other that you did unto me. But he would not hearken unto her. Then he called his servant who ministered unto him, and said, Put now this woman out from me, and bolt the door after her. Note. However much we may disapprove of Absalom's conduct in avenging his sister, you got to admit Amnon richly deserved the punishment which he ultimately got. We'll go ahead and keep on reading. And she had a garment of diverse colors upon her, for with such robes were the king's daughters who were virgins apparelled. Then his servant brought her out and bolted the door after her, and Tamar put ashes on her head, and rent her a garment of diverse colors that was on her, and laid her hand on her head, and went on crying. Notes. Even this particular garment denoted her as the king's daughter, and it was also a symbol of her virginity. Verse 20. And Absalom her brother said unto her, Has Amnon your brother been with you? But hold now your peace, my sister. He is your brother. Regard not this thing. So Tamar remained desolate in her brother Absalom's house. Notes. Absalom was plotting revenge, although every evidence is that he did not relate such to Tamar. He's plotting on getting even with things, as we will ultimately see borne out in the scripture. Verse 21. But when King David heard of all these things, he was very angry. And Absalom spoke unto his brother Amnon neither good nor bad, for Absalom hated Amnon because he had forced his sister Tamar. Notes. Absalom's outward demeanor was one of utter indifference, concealing a very cruel determination. And obviously, whenever we're talking about being forced in this case, we're talking about rape. Incest on top of that, which makes it even more vile. Verse 23. And it came to pass after 2 full years that Absalom had sheep shearers in Baal-Hazor, which is beside Ephraim. And Absalom invited all the king's sons. Notes. 2 years have passed since this event, so you can tell that Absalom is definitely biding his time. Verse 24. And Absalom came to the king and said, Behold, now your servant has sheep shearers. Let the king, I beseech you, and his servants go with your servant. Notes. Absalom was inviting David plus all his half-brothers to a feast. And the king said to Absalom, No, my son, let us not all now go, lest we be chargeable unto you. And he pressed him, howbeit he would not go, but blessed him. Notes: David himself was not really wanting to go, and he did. Verse 26. Then said Absalom, If not, I pray you, let my brother Amnon go with us. And the king said unto him, Why should he go with you? But Absalom pressed him, that he let Amnon and all the king's sons go with him. Notes: you would think that David should have suspected something here, but inasmuch as approximately 2 years had passed, with Absalom saying nothing about the rape of his sister Tamar, David probably thought that the incident had been forgotten, if he even knew anything really about it. And Absalom got what he wanted ultimately. He really didn't want David to be there in the first place. But he's going to end up getting his revenge, and we're going to read about that very soon. Verse 28. Now Absalom had commanded his servants, saying, Mark ye now, when Amnon's heart is merry with wine, and when I say unto you, Smite Amnon, then kill him. Fear not. Have not I commanded you? Be courageous and valiant. Notes: although Tamar's wrong was the mainspring of Absalom's conduct, yet Absalom, being the second in line to the throne, neither he nor his men could forget that Amnon, the firstborn, stood between him and the crown. So there are political reasons also for this little act here. Verse 29. And the servants of Absalom did unto Amnon as Absalom had commanded. Then all the king's sons arose, and every man got him unto his mule and fled. And it came to pass, while they were in the way, that tidings came to David, saying, Absalom has killed all the king's sons, and there is not a one left of them. Notes: evidently some of the servants who fled immediately upon Amnon's death thought that Absalom was intending to kill all the king's sons, which was not the case. But this is actually the message that David had received. He's going to get some gray hairs out of that one. Verse 31. Then the king arose and tore his garments and lay on the earth, and all his servants stood by with their clothes rent. Notes: this is the sign of distress, to tear your garment. The bitter payments of sin are now coming due. There is hell to pay, and King David's rear end is going to be the cash register, to say. Verse 32. And Jonadab, the son of Shimeah, David's brother, answered and said, Let not my lord suppose that they have slain all the young men of the king's sons, for Amnon only is dead. For by the appointment of Absalom this has been determined from the day that he forced his sister Tamar. Notes: now evidently from this, at the time, Jonadab did not reveal his complicity in helping Amnon in the first place in getting his sister into his evil clutches. Continuing. Now therefore let not my lord the king take the thing to his heart, to think that all the king's sons are dead, for Amnon only is dead. But Absalom fled, and the young man who kept the watch lifted up his eyes and looked, and behold, there came much people by the way of the hillside beside him. Notes: David must have surely have been relieved to see his other sons returning. Verse 35. And Jonadab said unto the king, Behold, the king's sons come. As your servant said, so it is. And it came to pass, as soon as he had made an end of speaking that, behold, the king's sons came, and lifted up their voice and wept. And the king also and all his servants wept very sore. Notes: no doubt at this time the terrible thought came to David's mind, which had been told him by the Lord concerning his sin with Bathsheba, that the sword should never depart from his house. Well, unfortunately, we must depart very shortly. We'll have to pick up in chapter 13, verse 37 of the book of 2 Samuel. Thank you, and God bless.